Perfect. There we go.
I figured it out.
I know. This is her first time doing a live, so I give her a round of applause. You know, I know for me it was definitely a difficult transition when you don't know, not comfortable with it. So here we are on live, and today we are going to be talking about 10 green flags. Before we get into that, I just wanted to bring awareness to both of what me and Mary Beth do. So check out Mary Beth's website and her Law of Attraction Addiction Recovery cards. All of her information is in her profile for Instagram, Day One Life Coaching. As well, while you're at it, don't forget to check out some of my services. I have my 3-month Empowered Goal Getter program, and everything is in the link in my bio as well. So take some time to support our fellow coaching businesses. But let's jump right into it of 10 green flags that we want to see in any type of relationship, whether it be romantic, friendship, family dynamics. So I'll have Mary Beth start first.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you so much, Carly, for inviting me to do this and get my first live out there. So I love that we picked green flags instead of red flags because everybody's doing red flags, and I'm a law of attraction teacher also. So what I know for sure is that we get what we focus on. So if we're focusing on the red flags all the time, that's all we're going to see is a bunch of red flags. So it's imperative when you first meet someone that you ask a lot of questions, and that is okay, and ask the right questions too. So one of the main things that would be a green flag is if you two share values together, values and lifestyle, because that stuff might seem like okay in the beginning when you're in that chemical haze, we'll call it, of limerence, you know, before, while you're still getting to know someone, and you might feel that, you know, deep attraction. However, that doesn't mean you're going to be a good match for a long-term relationship, right? So I wouldn't ever settle, you know, if there's something that's really important to you, such as religion. Let's say you're a Christian, it's going to be a green flag if the other person's also a Christian, because that's important to you. And you're going to want someone who it also values your lifestyle, your religion. If you're another good green flag would be, let's say you're not a drinker, you don't drink alcohol, but the other person drinks every day. That's going to be a red flag. That's not going to work out for you in the long run. You might be able to tolerate it in the beginning phases, like I said, when you're really excited and in that fresh new relationship. But later on down the road, that's going to be disturbing to you. So that's my number one green flag, was if their values and their lifestyle matches yours, 2 thumbs up. And then do you want me to go into the second one, or did you want to do one of yours, Carly?
I'll just add on to what you were saying with your green flag. I definitely think it's really important to what you brought up is attraction doesn't equal longevity in a relationship. So we have to understand that immediate connection or that honeymoon phase in a relationship doesn't mean longevity. What longevity equates to is, again, I think on those big ticket items, it's important to have similar moral codes, similar values, similar ways of life. It doesn't mean that everything has to be exact. And that's, again, why I like that we did the 10 green flags rather than red flags, because I feel like as a society, we're collectively pushing all of this bad energy out there. Like, oh, make sure you're hyper vigilant of all these little red flags. And it's like, well, yes, we do want to make sure that we aren't getting into a toxic relationship. We do want to acknowledge some of those things. We also don't want to constantly have ourselves sitting in a constant state of fight or flight, wondering like, oh, when's the next red flag, you know, or constantly feeling like we have to be hyper aware of everything, when in reality, we can allow ourselves to feel safe. But I definitely love what you kind of touched on there as far as like those values, those big ticket items. Those are the things you want. If it's little things, you know what I'm saying? You have to be able to say like, hey, is this something I'm willing to negotiate on? And this is where I say when you get into relationships, whether it be friendships or other than that, write out what are your non-negotiables and what are your negotiables. What are some things that, oh, the person's not really into those, it's okay. You know what I'm saying? And then what are those things that you literally, if they do not meet that criteria for you or have those values as you, it's a no-go. And you have to be willing to set and enforce that boundary. But you can say
Exactly. Establishing like what's a deal breaker and what are you willing to compromise on? But I would never recommend compromising on your values. Or lifestyle. If you have a healthy lifestyle, obviously it's a green flag if the other person also has a healthy lifestyle.
Absolutely.
So the second green flag would be your vision of the future. So let's say that you really want to have kids. That's an important question to ask, and don't feel weird asking it, because you're going to save yourself a lot of time and the other person a lot of time as well. So if you know you want 3 kids and the other person has never had any desire to have kids, it's probably just not going to be a good match. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with them or wrong with you. It's just not a good match. Let's say that you want a long-term relationship that leads into marriage, and the other person is looking for something casual. That's something that's great to find out right in the beginning, so you don't waste your time or theirs. Also, where do you want to live? If you know for a fact that you want to live, you eventually, like while you're married, and if you're in a long-term relationship or married, you want to move, or you have plans to move in the next few years, you want to live by the ocean. And this other person, maybe they do too, but they can't, because maybe they have kids that they're stuck here for one reason or another, and they just simply can't move, and that's your dream. Well, that's not gonna match. So if this person, a green flag would be that they have the same vision of their future that you have. Simple.
Perfect. I love that.
Did you want to add anything to that one, or I could go on to the next?
No,
green flag?
keep going.
Well, the next green flag would be for me that both partners are growth oriented. So what this means is when they're going to celebrate your accomplishments. You're going to uplift each other. This should feel like your best friend. If you feel like you're with your best friend, that is a huge red flag. Someone who's critical of you, or let's say something great happens to you and they're a little bit envious, or they're maybe insecure. So instead of celebrating your accomplishments, they actually put you down or make you almost take away some of your confidence. You really want someone growth oriented that you can evolve together. No one's going to be completely evolved. No one's expecting that. But someone who at least has a growth mindset is really important. So Absolutely. That would be my third green flag.
I love what you brought up too about, and it's not to say that we don't all have insecurities, but it is to say that we have to, if we are ready to engage, especially in a romantic relationship, if we are ready to engage in a relationship, that requires us to at least be in a state where, we all have insecurities, but we don't project them. So we're at a place of self-awareness where we understand that we currently still do have insecurities. And I think to some extent, we're all going to carry at least one with us to the grave. It is to say that we are at a point in our healing journey where we're never going to actually ever be fully healed. It's always going to be a process. It's always going to be evolution. But we're at a point where we are ready to invest in a relationship because we are at a point where we have the self-awareness and that ability and that desire to continue growing. And I think that's an important thing that you brought up, is making sure that each partner is really invested in the other one's success. They want to see you thrive, and it's not a competition. So if you ever feel like you're in a competition with someone, that's something to look out for, because in a green flag relationship, you're going to feel safe to share those accomplishments, and each person is going to be open to being able to support you in that journey, whatever that looks like for you. Even if it may not make sense to them, they'll support you because it makes sense to you, and it's something that you desire to pursue in life.
Exactly. You nailed it. And self-awareness is everything, and nobody's perfect. And being aware of that we're not perfect, and someone who's willing to heal those. We all have wounds from childhood, every single one of us. And if you think you don't, that just means you're not aware of it. It doesn't mean they're not there. They're there subconsciously. And by the way, guys, that's where those triggers come from. It comes from our childhood programming. And it's why we could be intelligent, polished adults, but then when we're in an argument, we sound like crazy people. We revert back to our childhood because we don't even realize that we're being triggered by something from our past. And so we can really sound irrational. And your logic, when you're in that subconscious mode, your logic goes bye-bye. You cannot be in rational mode and triggered at the same time. They don't exist together. So that's a big deal, to be self-aware and just know that we're going to always be triggered. And like Carly said, this is a lifelong process, and it's okay that we all, and just acknowledgement of those wounds goes a really long way. So my number 4 green flag is that you feel safe in their presence. Pay attention to the way you feel when you're around them. Do you feel at ease? Do you feel nauseous? Like I went out with a guy, and I can tell you that I felt like immediately, and I didn't trust my intuition. Our body speaks to us. Literally, trauma is held in our bodies. And with your intuition, your body will give you signals if you will take time to listen to it. I was around this guy in first date, and I felt just sick. And I was like, I gotta get away from it. I didn't know what it was. It was an energetic thing, really. And I just ignored it, and I dated him for too long, and it went in a really negative direction after that. So really pay attention to how you feel. Are you at ease? Are you tense? Are you anxious? Or are you happy, and do you feel comfortable? If you feel happy and comfortable around this person, that is a huge green flag. If you're feeling nauseous and like you got to get away, or just you can only spend a certain amount of time with them before you just are exhausted, that's an energy vampire. That's somebody you want to stay away from. So somebody you feel comfortable and at ease with is a huge green flag. That means you're with a good vibrational match.
And I think too, it's good to discern, and this is something that I've learned on my own journey, is learn to discern when your childhood wounds are speaking and when your intuition is speaking.
Yes.
So be able to discern, what is reality? Is this person's presence? Is this person's actions? Is this person's words that they speak to me causing this anxiety? Or are my childhood wounds speaking? So there's a lot of times in our life where we have to be able to see the red flags for what they are, and know when the behavior is causing us to feel that anxiousness, that disruption in our energy. And also be able to identify when we're self-sabotaging, because those childhood wounds can come up when you're getting into a healthy relationship, especially as someone who is a domestic violence survivor, who's been through a lot, and who's also been through a relationship that definitely wasn't the greatest. And I learned my lessons from that, and I hope that he did the same, but it was definitely eye-opening getting into a healthy relationship and allowing myself to feel safe in that, Right. So being able to discern, like, hey, am I uncomfortable because maybe there's parts of me that aren't really healed or ready yet to take on a relationship like this? Or is it because there's specific words, actions, and behaviors, and the way that this person carries themselves is kind of, again, like you said, an energy vampire?
That is a great point. The most difficult relationship is one after you've been traumatized, and it could be the healthiest relationship in the world, but we tend to, instead of just having healthy boundaries, we've been hurt, so we build a wall instead of just healthy boundaries. And then that's something that we need to work on within ourselves is, okay, boundaries good, walls where you don't let anyone inside, that's just a sign that, even though you're with a great person, your partner, male or female, whatever it is, is wonderful, treats you wonderfully, but you almost don't trust it because you've been so burned in the past that you're like, this can't be real, and you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop the whole time you're with them. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. So that would be the 4th green flag, and I'd only have one more, and then I'm going to pass it over to you. But the last one is compassionate. Is this person compassionate towards other people? How do they treat you? How do they treat strangers? How do they treat the waiter or waitress? That's a huge one. You guys can learn so much by that, and you will learn a lot about a person when you're out to dinner with them and you see the way that they treat someone who's helping them. And are they condescending? Do they look down on them? Or are they like really kind and compassionate? Green flag, obviously, is kind and compassionate person, someone who shows respect to everyone, not just people who they feel like are above them, and then they look down on other people who they feel are beneath them. That's not good. That's not a compassionate person. And when it comes to respect, That's another green flag. If you don't feel respect in a relationship, that's not the right relationship for you. There's a saying that says you can respect someone that you don't love, but you cannot love someone you don't respect. So respect is integral. Like if you're in a relationship and someone is disrespecting you, they don't love you. I don't care how many times a day they say it to you. It's bullshit. Like they just simply don't love you. So you need to feel that respect, and that would be my last green flag.
And I think too, to add on to that, you can't have respect without trust. So if a person does not trust they are worthy of being loved, so if either party is coming from a place of woundedness where they don't believe they're worthy of love and they're pushing away a good person, I feel like it's also good to pick up on an individual who can tap into their empathy, because that will show that they are not putting those walls up, that they are ready to let in that type of a relationship into their life, and they are emotionally, it's never going to say that we have to wait till we're 100% healed or 100% ready, but it is to say they're at least at a space where they can contribute to be a healthy individual in the relationship dynamic.
At least an open heart. We got to have an open heart. And we got to be vulnerable. If we're not being vulnerable, we're not being authentic. We're not being ourselves.
And two, the things that if you notice, like you're with someone and it's always criticism, or they look down on people, or maybe they only like to be around people who they perceive as above them. You also have to consider that person isn't tapping into their empathy. You know what I'm saying? That person might not be at that stage where they're ready to receive the love because they can't give it to others. You can't give what you don't have. You know what I'm saying? So if you can't tap into that empathy, you're not going to have it for yourself, and you're not going to have it for others. So you want to look for a person too that has, and I'm not going to say that they aren't accountable, because I think empathy and accountability can go hand in hand. I actually think that they should. But it is to say that that person has understanding for the human experience, not only for themselves, but for other people.
Right. Exactly. I agree 100%. So, compassion and respect and empathy, all green flags. And definitely that's a healthy person who's done some work on themselves. And like we've already said, nobody's perfect, but at least they're going to be working on themselves.
Absolutely. So I'll jump into the other five green flags that I have that I've given some considerable time to think about. And the number one thing that I have that is more of a personal preference, but I think it's actually really beneficial for longevity in a relationship, no matter what it is, but they can communicate in a healthy way, not only on the good topics, but the more difficult topics as well. And they also have an understanding for another person's perspective. So this is where accountability comes into play too. So can this other individual, whether it be a friendship, romantic relationship, family relationship, can they come to the table and, let's say, like in a relationship, if you want it to last a long time, your needs are going to change. So you're going to have to be willing to communicate those needs, or communicate when those needs are not being met. That can produce anxiety in an individual, but can they come forward in a healthy way and communicate those things and have those deeper conversations that are necessary, rather than actively avoiding those difficult topics? So can that person come to the table, and can they communicate in a healthy way about not only the good things that are going on in the relationship, but also be able to address and make sure that both partners are happy over the course of time? So that's definitely one of my first ones. I don't know if you want to add on to anything.
Absolutely. Like if what you just said, like if you're with somebody who you feel is unpredictable, or you feel like you're walking on eggshells, and you have all these things you want to communicate, but you're afraid of their response, there's probably a pattern. They've probably already blown up on you when you were trying to be honest before. And, that might not be someone who's ready to be in a healthy relationship yet. So a lot of people believe that, healthy relationships are conflict free, and that's not the case at all. There's always going to be conflict in relationships, right? So what you want is exactly what Carly said. Somebody who is approachable and is willing to have those tougher conversations with you, and not, resent you or punish you just for your honesty.
Absolutely. And I think with honesty comes truth. So if you are afraid to be honest with another individual, or if you are struggling to, how do I put it? If you can't be honest because you're fearful of like a reaction, that's coming from a place that like, hey, it's not that the other individual is bad, but maybe they're not in a healed place yet. And, understanding, at least when you're wanting to get into a relationship with someone, is that person at a space in their journey where they can be a healthy individual, I can be a healthy individual, and we can come together and have a healthy relationship. But
Absolutely.
Going into the second green flag that I have is this person emotionally aware, self-reflective, and accountable? So as far as emotionally aware, are they able to process their emotions? So, and this goes back to, again, like you were saying, we want to see consistency in the behavior. We don't want to have sporadic, like, oh, I experienced anxiety, so I did this knee-jerk reaction, or I'm experiencing X, Y, or Z, and I have these knee-jerk reactions. Now, those are triggers. Those are valid. But that person has to have the self-awareness and the ability to reflect on how they can desensitize themselves to those triggers and be a healthy component in a relationship. So can this individual not only identify their emotions, because you can't communicate what you can't identify. So can they identify their emotions? Can they communicate those things? And are they self-reflective and accountable to be able to hold themselves accountable and say, hey, this knee-jerk reaction when I'm feeling anxiety or when I'm feeling X, Y, or Z is not healthy and not conducive to a healthy relationship in my life. So what actions do I need to take to self-soothe in those things? Sorry about that.
Yeah.
A little bit.
You did. You froze a little bit. I was like, uh-oh, I guess I'm in this alone.
No, it's all good. My phone had a low battery. But so I think for me, that would be my second green flag, is that people are able to not only have the self-awareness of identifying their emotions, communicating those emotions, but also being able to hold their actions accountable. Your trauma isn't an excuse for your present behavior. It helps to explain it, but it's not an excuse. So we need another individual. A green flag is that they are accountable and making sure that those cycles of behavior that all of us end up picking up from our childhood does not carry on into the future. At what point can we heal as much as we can from the past so that we can have a healthy dynamic in the future?
And like you just said, like we're always going to react. I don't think there's ever an end to reacting unless you're like just a master on this earth. And I haven't met that person yet. I don't know if you listen to or know of Joe Dispenza. Are you a fan of Joe Dispenza? Well, I'm quoting him. He basically says like he reacts every day, and he's got this, he's got this stuff down, and he still will have reactions to things. Like life throws curveballs. Let's face it. But the key is how long are you going to stay in that reaction mode? How quick can you catch yourself? So we're always still going to react, but it's about how fast can you turn it around and like you said, be self-aware, like start to catch yourself and interrupt those patterns.
Absolutely. And then going into the third green flag that I have is they are consistent in their behavior. So this is going to go back to what we were talking about in the honeymoon phase. Is this person has this person shown you that they can consistently show that type of behavior in terms of longevity? And this is something I experienced in my first relationship where it was amazing, for the first part of it. And then immediately the mask kind of slipped and it was immediately downhill, so it's like, making sure too that when you do have conflict, hey, I'm not appreciating X, Y, or Z behavior. What can we do to create a solution to this? And they say, oh, let's do this. If they're not following up with that in consistent action and behavior, changed behavior, that's another thing to look out for. So a green flag is that this person has consistency. It's one thing, okay, is this person showing me love? Yes. Will they be able to show me that consistently? You know what I'm saying? So it's not, you want to be aware of what's the difference between love bombing and someone showing consistent love. Is this something that they can maintain over time? Have they shown you that they can maintain that over time? You know, then that's healthy love. You know, but if it's, you know, completely like euphoric and they can't maintain that consistency, or they say, hey, like, let's do X, Y, and Z, and they don't follow up with that. You know, they're not taking responsibility for what they say they're going to do. And this is another thing, consistency plus integrity. Does this person have integrity? Do they follow through on the things that they say that they're going to do? Mm-hmm. If they don't, then chances are in the future, it's not going to get much better until that person can address it on their end, that they can live with integrity. So are you an individual that is displaying healthy love and able to consistently uphold that? Or are you, you know, maybe in that love bombing where you love bomb, but you can't maintain it, or you say you're going to do something and then you don't follow through? So be able to tell between love bombing and actual genuine love, and having that connection and having those deeper conversations, which is good in any relationship. Being able to discern the two is very easy when you know what integrity looks like. Mm-hmm. So is that person just giving you lip service, or are they following through with consistent action? And that's going to be your big indicator of, hey, is this person love bombing me, or are they showing me genuine affection that they can uphold consistently throughout the relationship?
Yeah, and that actually gets easier with time and experience, because I know that you've been love bombed, I've been love bombed, and you know, anyone can paint a beautiful picture in the beginning of a relationship, right? And sometimes I think the love bombing, I mean, a lot of times it is intentional. A lot of times it is manipulation. But I do think sometimes it's just the other person being like super excited, and it might not be that they might really believe themselves that they're going to be able, like they're so in love and they're going to be able to keep up this high level of, you know, compliments. But, you know, the good old bait and switch, right? You know, someone, they reel you in, they build you up, and you finally are all in, you finally have all this trust, and you're like, I met my person, and you're so happy, only for them to, you know, switch into this completely different person than they showed up. You know, a lot of people, they send in their representatives in the beginning. It's not really their true authentic selves. And that's why it's so important. Like I said in the beginning, so important, imperative to ask questions on the first date. Don't be afraid to ask these really serious, deep questions. If it scares somebody away, guess what? That's probably a red flag, you know, that they weren't willing to answer questions that are going to be really important. If you don't want to invest yourself, your time into somebody who's not willing to really be their authentic self from the get-go.
Exactly. And if you're not going to walk with authenticity, and you're, again, holding up this mask, which I know we both have dealt with individuals who kind of held up that mask, right? So if you're going to hold up that mask, you can't expect, and this goes for even personal reflection. You know, we're not just talking about other people. We're talking about ourselves. If we can't walk with authenticity, we can't expect authentic relationships. So you need to, and this is the one principle that I live by, is I put my cards on the table. Mm-hmm. You know, take it or leave it. This is where I'm at currently. I'm in the evolution process. I want to grow. Here's XYZ that I'm currently working on with these different behaviors and habits. But this is where I'm at currently. You know, this is what I'm feeling today. You know, maybe today I'm feeling a little anxious, or maybe I'm feeling overwhelmed. You know, but at the end of the day, you got to put your cards on the table. Can someone accept you for where you're at, and also love you while you're continuing to grow? You know, that's another thing that I know you touched on in your green flags, and that's super important, you know, is stop falling in love with potential. You know, can you love that individual for where they're at? And it isn't to say that where they're at is bad, but I feel like a lot of us, the reason why we haven't been able to fall in love with ourselves, let alone allow another person to love us or feel like we're worthy of that love, is because we haven't had acceptance for where we're at in the process of where we're going. You know, right. We have found that ability to have acceptance for ourselves. So you'll oftentimes see in other people, the things that they judge other people for are the exact things that they're insecure in within themselves. Absolutely. You know, so it's important to understand that when you want a genuine, healthy relationship, you got to be able to put your cards on the table. You know, you got to be able to be truthful about your past, your present, your future, where you want to go. You know, you got to be able to walk with authenticity, or you're going to fake attracts fake. You know what I'm saying? You can't have someone you can't convince someone to fall in love with a version of you that you want to be. So you put up this mask of this person that you want to be. But deep down, if you're so insecure that you have to hold up this mask, chances are that person's going to intimidate you. That healthy love is going to scare you, and it's going to make you uncomfortable. So we all have to get to a point where we can take the mask off and say, here's who I am. I'm authentically showing up as me. You know, I'm not trying to please you. I'm not trying to please other people. I'm trying to please myself. I'm going to show up as myself. And I know that I'm still growing, and I accept that. You know, so I think that's really important.
Yeah, you made me think of the topic of people pleasing. And I know I was guilty of this myself. And like you said, when we're younger, I think we kind of fall into that trap of me too. And when you're dating, you just want the other person to like you when you're kind of insecure. And, these days I am very authentic, and if I'm on a date and I don't like something, I'm not going to pretend like I do. But I was guilty of that in the past. And people pleasing is where you get into those relationships where they never fight, and they don't fight because one or both are biting their tongue and they're not really being authentic. Everybody fights, like I said earlier. So if you're in that trap where there's zero conflict, I don't believe that it's for any other reason than one person's not being authentic. And that what that leads to is resentment in the long run, and also passive aggressive behavior, because eventually it's going to blow up. You're going to blow up like a volcano because you haven't been speaking your mind as you go along.
Exactly. And you have to be able, and that goes back to communication, be able to address your needs. And that goes into the next one is, another green flag is, are they accommodating to your needs, and vice versa? Mm-hmm. So when you describe to this person, like, hey, this is my love language, and here are some of my specific non-negotiable needs right now that I would need in a relationship. Are they able to accommodate those things? It isn't to say that we can't have self-reflection and say, hey, am I codependent? Know when you're asking, overextending yourself into a relationship, and be able to get secure of, hey, I know my needs are valid. I know that what I'm asking for is enough, and it still respects my individuality, that person's individuality, and also respects the genuine connection of the relationship. So you have to be able to get to a place where you're secure in your needs, obviously when you communicate them, mm-hmm. But does that other individual, when you communicate these things and you do speak up, do they listen? Right. And do they follow through with an action, especially if you give them like a specific thing? Like for me, my love language is words of affirmation. So mm-hmm. Does that individual come through and meet those needs of the words of affirmation? Because we all receive love differently at the end of the day. Like I could be gift giving to someone, and sure, it doesn't make them happy in the moment, but it doesn't make them feel loved, right. Because that's not how they receive love. So is this individual able to put themselves in another person's shoes and say, hey, I'm used to giving love like this, but this specific person that I want a future with receives love like this, So are they taking the actions to accommodate those needs of yours? And are you willing to do the same with that person? And chances are, if you say like, oh, well, I can't meet the needs of this other person, that's too much. Chances are you're probably not ready for a relationship, because at some point you do have to be able to say like, hey, I have to be willing to at least show some effort. I at least have to meet that person halfway. I need to show that I care about that individual, and how they receive the love from me is through this. So I will take these steps, whether it's something small, like even with love languages, words of affirmation, just something as a little Post-it note on someone's lunch before they go to work, or, something that takes 2 seconds, and just being able to say like, or send you just a small text like, hey, in the morning, I'm thinking of you. You know what I'm saying? I'll text you later. Like if I can't communicate during the day, little things like that are extremely important to someone who has a love language words of affirmation, or someone who has a love language of physical touch. You know what I'm saying? We have to be willing to open ourselves up to understanding that that other person has emotional needs and the connection, and they receive love differently than I do. And I have certain emotional needs and I receive love differently than they do. So how can we come in the middle and meet those needs? If they're not even willing, if you find yourself going 3/4 of the way and they're not even taking a step towards you, that's probably not a good thing. So the green flag is we want someone who's at least showing that they are coming forward. And even if they're not comfortable or used to expressing love in that way, they're willing to take a step forward and do that for you and be willing to come and accommodate your needs as well.
Yeah, that's so important for both partners put forth effort. And we've all seen those relationships where it's like one person obviously is doing way more for the other and the other is just like more of a taker. And those are always doomed. You know, those are pretty toxic relationships, really. And I feel like the love language test should be required for everybody in the beginning of a relationship, because if like mine's acts of service and my ex was gifts. So gifts are great. Who doesn't love gifts? But that wasn't making me feel loved. Kind of like what you were saying earlier. I was like, well, this is great, but I'm lacking emotional and spiritual and, you know, all of these other things that were more important to me, or, you know, acts of service, which is like, I just really wanted him to, you know, do something now and then. And instead I would get a gift. And it's like, well, that's his love language, not mine. So it's just doesn't work out. It's because there's somebody who's going to feel empty if they're not willing. And both, like I said, both partners need to be willing to do that. You can't just have one person doing all the work. It's not enough.
It goes back to communicating those needs. If you have already communicated your needs, these are my emotional needs. Here are specific actions that are small that you can take to meet these needs. And here's my love language. Here are small little things that I really appreciate in a relationship that make me feel loved and meet that love language. And that person isn't even taking a step forward towards meeting those things. Then yes, I would say that that's not going to be a healthy dynamic. You know, and either one or both individuals are just not ready to come to the table, because when you are in a relationship, whether that be friendship, relationship, family relationship, it's not going to be one-sided for much longer. You know, you're the other person is eventually going to get to a point where they clock out and they say, well, I'm no longer investing my energy. I'm going to withdraw my energy from this situation. So you have to be able to say, like, hey, if I'm entering any type of relationship, there's going to be effort required, period. Am I going to be willing to understand that other person's perspective and at least take a step towards that? If not, I need to back out, you know, and I need to, unfortunately, you know, let that person find someone who can meet those needs. You know what I'm saying? It's not to say that we can't grow together, but it is to say some people are in your healing journey. You're at different places, like completely different places, you know, and that's the hard part about it, is being able to say, like, hey, you know, we all are on our healing journey and we can respect that. But we have to understand that, you know, if you're over here and someone else is like all the way down, like there at least has to be somewhat of an equal playing field in the game. And two individuals who are willing to compromise and put in the effort, you know. And then getting into the last one here is, you both respect individual growth as a part of relationship growth. And what I mean by that is, again, I myself used to be very codependent. So my mood, my happiness will be extremely determined by another person's existence and their performance in the relationship. So if the other person was not performing well, there goes Carly's mood right in the gutter, you know, or if someone was performing extremely well, you know, there goes my mood through the roof, you know. And part of that too is I was raised in a household too with a mother who has bipolar 1 and BPD. So this cycle is something that I experienced in my first relationship, and I saw it repeat itself, was that I was very codependent. So now as I look back on that and I'm growing and I'm healing, I understand that in a relationship, I need to be my number one priority, and that other individual needs to be their own number one priority. Or however they want to arrange their priorities, they can, but yourself comes number one. You know, if you are not healthy mentally, you're not healthy physically, you're not taking care of yourself, you're not focusing on your own healing journey, you can't expect a healthy relationship in your life. Right. The healthy dynamic is not going to be there. You can't manifest a healthy relationship out of two unhealthy individuals. You know, and it isn't to say we'll never be fully healed. And it's not to say that there won't ever be conflict or that there won't ever be little things, you know what I'm saying, that go on in a relationship or points where things come to a head and we need to address them on our own healing journey. But it is to say that we have to be willing to say, like, as an individual, I want to focus on myself. I want to make sure that I'm the healthiest person that I can be with what I have right now for myself, but also so I can have a healthy relationship.
We need to be the person that we want to attract. We have to be that person. We can't expect that we're going to get this amazing person when we don't even take care of ourselves. And, you know, we also want someone who takes care of themselves. But, you know, an important thing is we need to be able to speak up. Our partners are not psychics. So we have to have that healthy communication, right? If we don't speak up, then it's not fair to be resentful of someone for not doing something, for not reading your mind, essentially. You know, we have to be willing to just go out there. And if you have a partner, you don't feel comfortable speaking up and telling them your needs, it's probably the wrong partner.
Absolutely. You shouldn't be walking on eggshells. And most importantly, you should be able to tell the truth, you know, and also understand that. And then that's another thing too, is you got to unlearn unhealthy old relationships that you had, you know, and this also comes into play too. And this is where I say I like to bring in a lot of childhood dynamics and past trauma dynamics too, is it's important to understand, are you uncomfortable expressing your needs because in a past relationship you expressed your needs and they got shot down? Or right. Are you afraid to express your needs because that specific person you are dealing with in the present moment has shown you with their behavior that they will shoot you down when you try to bring up something in a healthy way? So I think there's always, please always keep self-reflection into the picture. And this will help you to discern between the red and the green and be able to say, is this actually a healthy relationship? And might I be self-sabotaging or projecting my past experiences onto this? Or is there specific actions, words, behaviors that are triggering these things inside of me, also making me feel like I cannot speak up? So it's being able to discern between the two that's super important. And again, going back to like individual growth, you know, if you cannot focus on yourself, if you cannot focus on your own journey, you can't expect to have a healthy relationship if you are constantly in that state of unhealedness and you're not taking the time, you're actively avoiding your own journey. And a lot of people try to. I had another low battery.
Okay, I'm back.
No, it's all good. So are you able to say like, hey, as an individual, I need to maybe develop myself further. You know, I need to at least identify. And here's what I'll say, that there will always be times where I feel again that you react, but we want to try to prioritize responding over reacting whenever possible that we can. And that is a sign that you are healing. It's not to say that we can ever get rid of reactions in life, but right. It is
just catch yourself. Catch yourself.
Yeah. Yes. It is to say that how you know you're healing on your own individual journey is when you find yourself catching yourself before it turns into something more than that. So being able to catch yourself and respond rather than react is how you know you're on your healing journey. But I think, especially in the past, being very codependent, I learn now the importance of, I have my own individual life. I have to, at the end of the day, whether that individual is in my life or not, I have to be willing to take care of myself. I have to be willing to show up as the best version of myself and focus on my own goals. Everything outside of the relationship, so that when I do spend that quality time with that individual and I do have those conversations about building a future with that individual, I'm showing up as my most authentic and healthiest self in that moment. You know, we're never going to be fully healed, but I'm showing up as the best version of myself that I can.
Well, energetically too, as if you're codependent, energetically, you're always going to be pushing that other person away because they can feel that. You know that they're, you know, you get too clingy. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes that clingy. You know, I've been on both sides of that. So, and it's just a very it's a turnoff, really, when someone's too clingy to you and tries to smother you, and you just have that feeling of I've got to get away. I've got to get away. And that tends to be like that dynamic between, there's always someone who's too clingy and the other person who's pushing them away or retreating, you know. So I think that that's huge, where, like you said, you almost have to just be okay. Not almost, you do have to be okay being by yourself if it goes that way. When you're in that relationship, if you used to be codependent, if that's your tendency to be codependent, you have to get to a point in a healthy relationship where you're okay losing that person. And that's how you've healed.
And I think you brought up a good dynamic there too. It's like the other person is to making sure that a green flag in a relationship is, again, that equal effort. You know what I'm saying? Not trying to earn another person's approval or try to earn another person's, you're almost putting your worth in someone else's hands. So if you have to convince someone to love you, that's not right. You're putting too much effort in on your part, and that person needs to be willing to take that step up or step out. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So love comes from within. Love comes from within first, and you have to love yourself. I believe, you know, before you can really be in a true healthy relationship. If you don't love yourself, you know, if you don't feel worthy of love, you're not going to attract the right person, the healthiest person. Because I think people sense this stuff, you know, at least on a subconscious level. And I'd like to add that these triggers and these, you know, traumas, it's, you know, it's like, well, we have to get there, but they're not always that easy to recognize, right? Because they're so subconscious. This programming is hard to detect sometimes. And it's not like we're saying it's something you have to do overnight. It's just something to start paying attention to. Make those unconscious programs, bring them to your consciousness. Just start really paying attention, really, because most people don't pay attention. We distract ourselves with work, alcohol, Netflix, our cell phones, social media, just scrolling and scrolling. We're distracting ourselves. And really, if you just bring yourself back to the present moment and just start paying attention, you're going to be able to heal. But if we continue as a society to just live in this world of distraction, that really does prevent us from healing and getting to the point of self-awareness. And self-awareness is integral to a healthy relationship.
Absolutely. And what you brought up there is very important about distractions, you know, otherwise known as active avoidance. You know, we can't expect to have a healthy relationship if we aren't addressing the things that we're trying to avoid. You know, and unfortunately, that's going to be uncomfortable. In a relationship, I would argue, almost brings that out even more. So if you were already uncomfortable, if you were already uncomfortable trying to address those things that you were actively avoiding before a relationship, and then you enter into a relationship, you're going to see that, like, the pressure is going to be real because now you have another individual in the picture, and that relationship's going to bring out those things and put more pressure on you to address those things you've been active.
It all comes out to the surface. I hear it time after time with clients. You know, a huge thing that I do conscious relationship coaching, and a huge thing is people, I hear this all the time, is I really thought I was healed, and then I get in this relationship and it's like they're pushing all my buttons and, you know, poking all my wounds, and it's almost like they just feel shameful or guilty because they really thought they had already put that stuff away. And it's okay when that happens. And the great news is that you're actually aware of it. Like, hey, you noticed it this time. In the past, you wouldn't have even been aware of it. So that is still a huge step forward to me.
Absolutely. And I think it's just important in general. Again, we all just got to be focused on our own healing journey, and we have to accept ourselves for where we're at while we're in the process of trying to go wherever we're trying to go in life. And I think overall, at the end of the day, it's important to have people one that support you in your dreams and your goals and your vision for life, but also people that hold you accountable. So I would almost argue that if you have people in your life that are supporting your bad behaviors, they're the first people that need to get out of your inner circle. Mm-hmm. Don't go where you're comfortable. Oftentimes, and this is where I'm going to say too, sometimes healthy relationships, if you've never been used to it and you're still healing yourself, they're going to feel uncomfortable because that person might challenge you. You know what I'm saying? In a healthy way, not in a criticism way, but that person might challenge your growth. And then you're like, oh crap, I can't sit in my shit for much longer. Like, I actually got to do something about this. I got to take that step. And so it's important to have people in your life, no matter the type of relationship, that hold you accountable in a compassionate way, but also support your vision and your dreams for your life and not try to control your end goals and your outcomes in life that you desire for your life, but support you and uplift you towards your dreams and also hold you accountable to the behaviors that you need to achieve those things. So for me personally, if I was doing something that wasn't going to bring me to where I communicated that I wanted to be in my life, I would hope that those people in my life would call me out and say, hey, Carly, maybe try this instead, or bring it up in a way, and I think we all can bring things up in a way in a relationship that doesn't trigger another person's fight or flight response. So bring things up in a way that holds them accountable to their actions. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, I want to see you, reach these goals that you have for yourself. And I'm here. And another question you can ask is, how can I better support you? What do you need in this time to be supported? So I think asking those questions is super important. And I think we touched on a lot of really good green flags to look out for in relationship and how to discern between, again, in a society that infiltrates us with red flags. And I think combined with all of our childhood trauma and our past relationship trauma almost causes us to sabotage good things. I think it's important to turn our awareness to the green flags and understanding when we do actually have a healthy relationship, how to identify what that looks like and what reality is versus us projecting past experiences onto a healthy future.
And you just made me think of one more thing that I wanted to insert regarding if you've been in an abusive, emotionally abusive, at least, relationship, and then you find yourself in a healthy one, be very aware that you might feel a little bit of boredom, but don't, because you get addicted to drama. You get addicted to that relationship that was a roller coaster ride. Don't leave that person just because you feel like, oh, well, I don't have all this drama in my life. Sometimes a healthy relationship can feel a little bit boring at first, but that's because, I would really urge you to give that relationship a try and just continue it until you just take that time to get used to healthy. If you're not used to healthy, you will at first feel like this is a little bit boring because I miss that dopamine drip,
And I feel coming from someone who has family members with substance use disorders, you throw things like addiction into the mix, and that also, literally addiction wires your brain to crave those highs, and unfortunately the lows come with it too, but they crave the highs. So, as a person coming from that past place with parents who has had substance use disorders, and also from my past place of another relationship that I had where my past partner had a substance use disorder, I found that out in week 2 when his everything was going down, and you don't see how that impacts you, and to understanding how your childhood plays in a role. That first relationship, that I was in, being able to see how that active addiction played into the relationship just really showed me that even me personally, I was still unhealed because I was still craving those highs and those lows that I've experienced in childhood. Things with my mother who was in active addiction. When the good was good, it was great. And I always craved that greatness. So being able to, again, like you said, don't self-sabotage just because you're feeling comfortable and safe in a relationship.
Right. That's a good thing, you guys. That's a green flag.
Exactly.
Alcohol, I know that a big reason I quit drinking alcohol too is you have clouded judgment when you're drinking, and you could end up, it really keeps you in these toxic relationships because of the clouded judgment, because you're drinking, like I have whole relationships I could say, man, well, I was drunk for that whole relationship, and then you end up staying too long because sober up for a while with that other person and see if you really, if it's really the relationship for you or not. Because I can tell you that addictions in general will keep you entangled with the wrong person.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And two, like on the other end of that, if you are in a relationship with someone who is in an active addiction, it's definitely something to consider as well. And again, it goes back to those lifestyle choices. And it's like, two, another thing is if you want to live a sober lifestyle, having someone to support you in that, and making sure you have a partner that's holding you accountable to your sobriety,
and not bringing you down and influencing you against it. There's, I've had that happen.
That's such a big thing, is having, and that goes for both individuals. If you, no matter, what your relationship with alcohol looks like, whether it's occasional, whether you know that you need to tune it down, or whether you're trying to stay sober. The thing is, make sure the people, whether it's friends, family, your relationship, someone communicates that they want to support you and that you and your well-being is the priority. You know what I'm saying? So if someone needs to go to a meeting, or somebody needs to go take care of, they have a group that they go to, or they need to make that a priority for them in their life, a healthy relationship supports that growth. And a healthy relationship, no matter the friendship, the type of relationship, does not put those things around the individual who they know is trying to create a better life for themselves. So it's about who you surround yourself with, and having a healthy relationship. It goes back to, again, those big values. Those people that are meant to be in your life are going to support your growth. They're going to support you in your decision to have a healthier lifestyle. They're going to ask, how can I support you? They're not going to put you in a position that makes you feel threatened, that threatens your own growth. They're going to want to support you no matter how that looks like.
And be with your best friend. You got to be with your best friend, guys. Like, if it doesn't feel like your best friend and you're sleeping with the enemy, that's not a good thing. You need to feel like you're with someone who's uplifting.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think we really did touch on a lot of good things, and I hope.
I know, we talked for almost an hour.
I know.
An hour, and it felt like 5 minutes to me. I hope you're able to save this, because I think we that many people on the live, but we touched on a lot of good stuff that I think will help a lot of people.
Yes, I should be able to save it. I'll definitely be able to post it, but I'll see how I can save it. But I just wanted to thank everyone who decided to show up today and watch our live about the 10 green flags and relationships to look for. And I hope you all got some value out of it. And again, check out both of our services, Mary Beth's Law of Attraction addiction cards as well on her site that's in her bio. And also my services, I'm currently running a promotion on my Empowered Goal-Getter program, which is 3 months long. So it's an extensive program as well. So make sure you go and check out both of our bios. Always trying to support other businesses as well. And as coaches, it's important to have a community that supports each other. But thank you all for coming out, and I hope you all got some value from today. I hope you all have a blessed day.
Thank you.